Every December, millions of people around the world hang up fairy lights, exchange gifts, and gather around a Christmas tree. We call it Christmas, a season of joy, love, and togetherness. But what if I told you most of what we think we know about Christmas isn't quite what it seems? From ancient pagan rituals, Roman festivals, and marketing reinventions, to a few dark and forgotten traditions. This is what most people don't realize about Christmas. Stay tuned, because the real story of Christmas might surprise you. Let's start with the date, December 25th. Most people assume that's the actual birth date of Jesus Christ, but the Bible never mentions a date at all. In fact, early Christians didn't even celebrate birthdays. They viewed them as a pagan custom. So why December 25th? Long before Christianity spread through Europe, the Romans were already celebrating something around that same time, a wild festival called Saturnalia. Saturnalia was a week-long party dedicated to Saturn, the god of agriculture. People feasted, exchanged gifts, decorated their homes with greenery, and even temporarily freed slaves. During that time, the Roman Empire was mainly a polytheistic society, meaning its people honored and worshipped many different gods and goddesses. The most important deities in Roman religion were Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. Although monotheistic faiths like Judaism and early Christianity existed within the empire, Romans primarily revered multiple deities. They believed these gods played a vital part in the founding of Rome and influenced everyday life. Worship took place both in public and private settings, while the state honored major gods and goddesses by adorning public buildings and fountains with their images. Families at home focused their devotion on the deities they personally favored. When Christianity became Rome's official religion, church leaders adopted December 25th to align with existing pagan festivals, making it easier to convert people without erasing their traditions. Did you know December 25th wasn't randomly picked for Christmas? Early Christians chose that date because it connected to two important moments: the Roman festival of Sol Invictus, celebrating the winter solstice, and what they believed was the date of Jesus' conception, March 25th. By doing this, the early church blended familiar pagan traditions with the new Christian faith, a smart cultural move that helped spread Christianity throughout the Roman Empire. In ancient Rome, December 25th was already a big deal. It was celebrated as the birthday of the unconquered sun, or Sol Invictus. This festival marked the winter solstice, the time when days start getting longer again. By placing Jesus' birth on this date, early Christians made a powerful connection, linking Christ, the light of the world, with the return of light after the darkest days of the year. It was a clever move that helped make Christianity more familiar and acceptable to Roman culture. There's also another layer to it. Early Christians believed that Jesus was conceived on March 25th, the same date they associated with his crucifixion, which they calculated as the day before Passover. And if you count 9 months from March 25th, you land right on. You guessed it, December 25th. So this wasn't a random pick. It was actually based on symbolic timing. And finally, let's talk strategy. The Roman Church officially started celebrating Christmas on December 25th around 336 CE, during the reign of Emperor Constantine. Many historians think this was a political and cultural move, a way to replace or Christianize popular pagan festivals like Saturnalia and Sol Invictus. Pretty smart, right? It turned a well-loved pagan holiday into one of the most important celebrations in Christian tradition. In essence, Christmas was built on top of older winter solstice celebrations, a cultural remix that merged light and faith. The Christmas tree's pagan roots. Its roots? Not in Bethlehem, but in Northern Europe. In the Northern Hemisphere, the shortest day and longest night of the entire year happens around December 21st or 22nd. That moment is called the winter solstice. And to ancient civilizations, this day wasn't just astronomy. It was spiritual panic. They believed the sun was a god. And every winter, when days got darker and colder, they thought the sun god was getting weak, dying, losing power. So when the solstice finally arrived, it meant something important. The sun god had hit rock bottom, but now recovery begins. The light would start coming back. That's why they celebrated the solstice. Long before Christianity existed, people were already obsessed with green plants in winter. When everything else died, evergreens stayed alive. Pine, spruce, fir. These trees didn't lose their color. And to ancient people, that wasn't just interesting, it was spiritual. So during the darkest part of the year, they would bring evergreen branches inside their homes, hang them over doors, over windows, anywhere they could. They believed those evergreens had power. Power to protect the home. Power to keep away evil spirits, ghosts, sickness, bad energy, all the things winter represented. So while today we decorate for holiday aesthetics, back then, evergreens were used as a shield, a symbol of life surviving the darkest days. This is the emotional and symbolic root foundation of the Christmas tree tradition, thousands of years before Christmas ever existed. But this wasn't just one culture doing this. Across Northern Europe, this symbolism kept appearing again and again. The Druids, the priest class of the ancient Celts, decorated their temples with evergreen boughs as a symbol of everlasting life. They believed these evergreens held a kind of strength that winter couldn't erase. And in Scandinavia, the Vikings had their own interpretation. They honored evergreen mistletoe because of its connection to the myth of Balder, their god of light, and his death. To them, this plant wasn't decoration, it was a reminder that even in darkness, there was a promise that light would return. So across different civilizations, different religions, different regions, evergreens weren't just plants. They were spiritual technology. They were proof that in the middle of the darkest season, life still wins. Now, let's talk about the man in red, Santa Claus. His story starts with a real person, St. Nicholas, a 4th century bishop born around 270 AD in Patara, in what is now Turkey. Why was he so important? St. Nicholas became famous for secret gift-giving, helping the poor, protecting children, saving sailors, funding dowries for poor girls. There was one famous story that demonstrated his kindness and generosity. A poor man had 3 daughters but no money for their marriages. Nicholas secretly dropped bags of gold through the window or down the chimney in some versions so the daughters wouldn't be forced into slavery. These stories created the archetype anonymous generosity, giving to children, protecting the vulnerable. St. Nicholas became one of Christianity's most beloved saints, and his feast day, December 6th, was a major gift-giving holiday in medieval Europe. Centuries later, Dutch settlers brought the Sinterklaas tradition to America. Sinterklaas is literally the Dutch pronunciation of St. Nicholas. Over time, in American English, Sinterklaas became Santa Claus. Now we have St. Nicholas, Sinterklaas, Santa Claus. But he still wasn't Santa yet. Not the version we picture today. The transformation happens in the 1800s and 1900s through media and imagination. Writers and illustrators began to change him. Washington Irving described him riding a flying wagon. Clement Clark Moore's A Visit from St. Nicholas, more famously known as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, introduced flying reindeer, chimneys, and stockings. Piece by piece, the modern Santa image was being assembled. But the final visual upgrade, the Santa brand look, comes in the early 20th century. In the 1930s, Coca-Cola ran a Christmas advertising campaign, and they illustrated Santa as a warm, friendly, chubby, red-suited grandfather figure. That image stuck. Mass media amplified it. Magazines, department stores, holiday advertising. This is the moment when Santa becomes visually locked into the global cultural imagination. Santa becomes universal, not just as a religious figure, but as a symbol of generosity, fantasy, magic, and commercial holiday joy.
En la Navidad logramos ayudar y nos gusta trabajar con esta canción en la Navidad. Santa Claus.
Christmas wasn't always warm lights and cozy sweaters. In the frozen alpine regions of Europe, winter was something to fear. And out of that fear, a creature was born. One of the most terrifying figures in holiday folklore, Krampus. Krampus is the dark mirror of St. Nicholas. Where St. Nick rewards good children, Krampus hunts the bad ones. He's described as a towering, horned beast, part goat, part demon, with matted fur, glowing eyes, and long, twisted horns. Chains rattle from his body, not to restrain him, but to warn you he's coming. and in his hands, a bundle of birch sticks for whipping naughty kids, and sometimes a sack, or a cage for dragging them away. But Krampus didn't start as a Christmas story. His roots are older than Christianity itself. Long before the church arrived in the mountains of Austria and Bavaria, people believed winter was ruled by violent spirits, creatures that roamed the dark forests, punishing anyone who didn't show proper respect to the season. Krampus was one of those ancient spirits. It's a reminder that winter could kill as easily as it could bless. When Christianity spread, the church tried to suppress these pagan monsters. But Krampus refused to disappear. Instead, he found a new role. He was paired with St. Nicholas as his shadow, his enforcer. On December 5th, the night before St. Nicholas Day, villagers believed Krampus would descend from the mountains, rattling chains and scraping his horns along doors, searching for misbehaving children. Even today, the tradition continues. In Austria, hundreds of people dress in horrifying handmade costumes, running through the streets in chaotic Krampus runs. Bells clang, torches burn, and massive horned figures charge at crowds, a living echo of ancient winter fears. Krampus reminds us of something modern Christmas tends to forget. The holiday season didn't begin as pure joy. It began with darkness, with fear, with the struggle to survive winter. And in that cold, dangerous world, Krampus was the warning. Be good or the shadows will come for you. When you strip away the shopping, the lights, the ads, and the chaos, what does Christmas actually mean? Most of us grow up thinking Christmas has one fixed origin, the birth of Jesus on December 25th. But when you dig deeper, you discover something fascinating. Christmas isn't one story. It's a fusion, a remix. Thousands of years in the making. Long before Christianity existed, ancient cultures were already celebrating something in December. These people lived through brutal winters. Food became scarce, days grew shorter, nights grew colder, and survival was never guaranteed. So when the winter solstice arrived, the shortest day of the year, it was a turning point. A moment of relief, a promise that the sun would return. They lit fires, they feasted, they decorated their homes with evergreen plants, symbols of life that refused to die. And even though these rituals had nothing to do with Christmas, they carried the same emotional core, hope in darkness, light returning after the coldest days. As centuries passed, more traditions joined the celebration. St. Nicholas, a kind bishop known for secret generosity, became a symbol of compassion. German winter customs evolved into what we now call the Christmas tree. Later, Victorian values shaped the holiday into a season of family, charity, and reflection. And in the 1900s, commerce added Santa, gifts, decorations, and the huge holiday economy we know today. So Christmas didn't come from one culture or one moment. It grew like a snowball rolling through history, picking up pieces from everywhere it passed. Every version of Christmas, pagan, Christian, medieval, Victorian, modern, centers on the same core human ideas: light in darkness, hope when things feel cold, generosity in a hard world, family and community when life is fragile, the belief that better days are coming. Even the most commercial parts of Christmas, the gifts, the lights, the excitement, echo older themes, celebrating abundance at the end of scarcity, sharing warmth, bringing joy during the darkest time of year. And maybe that's why Christmas resonates so deeply, even for people who aren't religious, because it speaks to something universal, a need we've had since the beginning of human history. It's a reminder to slow down, to reconnect, to give, to forgive, to let the childlike parts of ourselves feel wonder again. Christmas doesn't belong to one culture or one faith. It belongs to everyone who believes that kindness matters. That light can return after darkness. That joy can still be found, even in the coldest moment of the year. So what does Christmas really mean? It means what it has always meant, long before any single tradition gave it a name: hope, light, connection, and the belief that no matter how dark the world gets, warmth always finds its way back. So when you hang that ornament or exchange that gift, remember you're part of a story older, richer, and more beautiful than most people ever realize. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you in the next one.